Each year, more than 6.2 million metric tons of table grapes are packed, shipped, and sold outside their country of origin. That's the equivalent of 1,150 Olympic-sized swimming pools filled with grapes, all harvested, chilled, and transported across the globe without losing their firmness, sweetness, or market value. This volume doesn't move randomly. It follows precise routes through farms, cooling facilities, shipping terminals, and inspection stations. From the sun-drenched valleys of Chile to supermarket shelves in Germany, Singapore, and Canada, grapes move quickly and quietly, protected from heat, moisture, and time. Fresh grapes are one of the most fragile exports in commercial agriculture. Unlike grains or dried fruit, they can't be stored at ambient temperatures or processed for shelf stability. Once picked, they begin to soften, the sugars increase, the skin dehydrates. Within hours, any break in the cold chain can lead to visible spoilage. To prevent this, harvesting begins early, sometimes before sunrise. Cooling systems are activated minutes after packing. Sensors monitor humidity and temperature inside each container. Even the truck routes are calculated to avoid heat exposure and delays. All of it for a product that weighs less than 5 grams, bruises easily, and must arrive looking untouched. This isn't just fruit transport. It's a global system designed to protect something perishable in motion across thousands of kilometers. Day after day, season after season, grapes are among the oldest cultivated fruits in human history. Archaeological evidence traces their domestication back over 8,000 years to the slopes of the South Caucasus region, where early farmers began selecting wild vines that bore sweeter, larger fruit. Over time, grape cultivation spread westward, across the Mediterranean and eastward into Persia, India, and eventually China. Today, grapes are grown on every inhabited continent except Antarctica. But when it comes to export volume, a handful of regions dominate. China leads global production, but most of its grapes are consumed domestically. The true giants of grape exports are countries like Chile, Peru, South Africa, Italy, Spain, and the United States. Each of these regions shares a particular set of conditions: mild winters, long, dry summers, sloped terrain for drainage, and soils that limit water retention, encouraging the vines to produce smaller, more flavorful berries. In Chile's Central Valley, rainfall can be as low as 200 millimeters per year, barely enough to support other crops, but ideal for controlled grape production using drip irrigation. In South Africa's Western Cape, harvest coincides with the Northern Hemisphere's winter, allowing growers to supply European markets when no local fruit is available. This seasonal offset gives southern exporters a critical window, often commanding higher prices. Grape varieties are also selected for durability. Thompson, Seedless, and Crimson dominate global shipments, not because they're the most flavorful, but because they resist bruising and hold texture for weeks under cold storage. Their skins are thick enough to survive handling, and their sugar levels remain stable even after long-haul transport. What ends up in a fruit bowl in Amsterdam or Bangkok is rarely random. It's the result of matching soil, weather, labor, and logistics in a few specific regions, calibrated to feed global demand at exactly the right time. A commercial vineyard is built for precision. Rows are aligned to optimize sunlight exposure, wind flow, and access for machines or manual workers. Most grapevines are planted in evenly spaced corridors, about 2.5 meters apart, supported by trellis systems that keep the canopy controlled and the fruit elevated off the ground. Before planting begins, the soil is tested for drainage, salinity, and organic content. In regions like Central California or northern Peru, where rainfall is scarce, drip irrigation is installed beneath each row, delivering just enough water to the root zone. Each vine receives a carefully measured dose, often no more than 4 liters per day, adjusted according to the growth stage and local temperature. Grapes are not annuals. A vine typically takes 3 years to produce its first commercial crop and can remain productive for up to 30 years if managed correctly. The planting season usually starts in early spring or late winter, depending on the hemisphere, with grafted cuttings, a rootstock adapted to local soil types joined with a fruiting. Variety chosen for export quality. As the vine grows, it is shaped deliberately. Shoots are trained upward or outward, depending on the trellis design. The most common in export-oriented farms is the vertical shoot positioning system, which creates a narrow wall of foliage that maximizes sun exposure and air circulation throughout the season. Each vine is visited dozens of times. Workers thin out excess shoots, remove lower leaves to improve airflow, and sometimes trim clusters to control size and uniformity. This labor is mostly done by hand. 1 hectare can require up to 500 hours of manual care between pruning, canopy management, and disease monitoring. Pest control is targeted and scheduled. Grapes are vulnerable to mildew, mites, and sunburn. To manage this, growers use integrated systems that combine chemical treatments with weather-based forecasting. In hot, dry regions, even the orientation of rows, north to south versus east to west, can affect how much direct heat the fruit receives. By mid-season, the vineyard is in full production. Green clusters begin to swell. Sugars accumulate slowly. Each plant is monitored weekly for signs of stress or imbalance. This is where the groundwork for export success is laid, not just in volume, but in consistency, because the market doesn't just demand grapes. It demands grapes that look identical, ripen together, and survive 3 weeks in cold storage without breaking down. Every decision in the vineyard, from how high to train a shoot to when to remove a single leaf, pushes the plant toward that outcome. Harvest doesn't begin with a date. It begins with a number. Growers monitor the Brix level, a measure of sugar content in the juice of the grape. For table grapes intended for export, the target usually falls between 17 and 21 degrees Brix. Too early, and the fruit lacks sweetness. Too late, and the texture begins to soften. In most regions, harvest starts early in the day. Before sunrise, crews move through the rows with knives or clippers. By mid-morning, temperatures can already exceed 28 degrees Celsius. In that heat, grapes begin to dehydrate. To preserve firmness, most picking is done before noon. Table grapes are delicate. Unlike wine grapes, which can be machine harvested and later processed into juice, these must arrive intact. Skins unbroken, bloom undisturbed, stems green. For this reason, hand harvesting remains standard across nearly all export operations. Workers move quickly but carefully, filling crates or field bins in a matter of minutes. Each bunch is lifted, rotated, inspected, and cut from the vine with a short curved blade. Damaged berries are removed on the spot. Clusters are handled gently to avoid compression or bruising. In some regions, pickers wear latex gloves to reduce skin contact and preserve the natural waxy coating on the grape surface. A single worker can harvest 800 to 1,000 kilograms per day, depending on terrain and fruit density. On a large farm, several dozen workers may collect over 20 tons by mid-afternoon. These crates are immediately transferred to cooling stations, sometimes right in the field, sometimes in shaded packing houses nearby. Timing is critical. Grapes begin to respire once picked. They generate heat, which accelerates softening. Without rapid cooling, even a high-quality bunch can lose shelf life in hours. That's why most export operations have a 6-hour window, from vine to refrigeration. In high-tech vineyards, digital harvest logs track which block was picked, when, by whom, and under what conditions. This data follows the fruit all the way to the shipping port, tying each crate to its source, not only for traceability, but for quality control. Because by the time a grape reaches a market 10,000 kilometers away, there are no second chances. The harvest has to be exact. The fruit has to be ready. The clock is already ticking. Once harvested, grapes enter a tightly controlled environment designed to slow deterioration. Inside shaded packing facilities, the fruit is trimmed, cleaned, and sorted. Loose berries are removed. Damaged stems are clipped. Each bunch is inspected and arranged by hand into cartons lined with soft paper to prevent friction. Within hours, pallets are moved into forced air cooling tunnels where cold air at 0 to 1 degree circulates at high speed. This rapid cooling, known as pre-cooling, brings the internal temperature of the grapes down within the critical 6-hour window. To prevent mold, especially from botrytis cinerea, sulfur dioxide pads are placed inside each box. These pads slowly release gas to sterilize the environment without altering the fruit. Humidity is held at 90 to 95% to avoid dehydration. Once cooled, pallets are wrapped in plastic film and stacked inside refrigerated chambers, awaiting final packing, labeling, and dispatch. Already marked for destinations thousands of kilometers away. In export facilities, speed and consistency define the workflow. Grapes are packed into standardized cartons, usually 4.5 or 8.2 kilograms each, with inner liners that absorb moisture and reduce movement during transit. Each box is barcoded, indicating origin block, harvest date, and destination. Pallets are assembled, typically 72 boxes per stack, and loaded into refrigerated containers, or reefers, capable of holding 20 metric tons. These containers maintain exact conditions, 0 degree Celsius, with high humidity and low airflow to prevent dehydration. For longer voyages, controlled atmosphere systems adjust oxygen and carbon dioxide levels to delay ripening. Routes are scheduled precisely. A shipment from Chile to China may spend 18 to 22 days at sea, while South African grapes reach European ports in under 2 weeks. At every stage, temperature sensors log data to ensure cold chain integrity. A single degree fluctuation can compromise quality and delay a shipment by days. Once a refrigerated container reaches its destination port, the inspection process begins immediately. Customs officials verify shipping documents, phytosanitary certificates, and temperature logs. If the cold chain was maintained, clearance proceeds within hours. Pallets are offloaded and moved into importer-controlled cold storage, typically within 36 hours of docking. From here, grapes are redistributed, some to supermarket distribution centers, others to wholesale markets or repackaging facilities. Retailers prefer short lead times. In Europe and East Asia, shelf placement often occurs within 48 to 72 hours of port arrival. Grapes are then displayed in open-air stands, refrigerated shelves, or plastic clamshells, still showing signs of freshness despite sometimes traveling over 10,000 kilometers. Shelf life now depends on conditions in the store, but even under optimal refrigeration, most grapes are sold within 10 to 14 days of arrival, completing one of the most fragile supply chains in fresh produce. Behind every exported crate is a coordinated system powered by both machines and people. Modern vineyards rely on remote irrigation sensors, GPS-linked harvest logs, and automated packing lines to increase efficiency without compromising fruit quality. Inside reefer containers, data loggers continuously monitor temperature, humidity, and CO2 levels, sending alerts if conditions drift. In longer shipments, controlled atmosphere units reduce oxygen to below 5%, slowing respiration and preserving firmness. Yet, despite automation, much of the system still depends on labor. In South Africa alone, over 120,000 seasonal workers support vineyard operations during peak season. They handle pruning, harvesting, sorting, and packing, tasks that require consistency, judgment, and care. Each decision, whether made by hand or algorithm, protects a fruit that bruises with a tap and ripens by the hour. It's a supply chain built as much on skill as it is on steel and sensors. Fresh grapes are not just a seasonal fruit, they are a high-value commodity that fuels entire regional economies. In 2023, the global table grape export market was valued at over $9.6 billion, with volumes led by Chile, Peru, and South Africa. The demand is consistent, especially from countries like the United States, China, Germany, and the Netherlands. Profit margins are shaped by timing, Early season shipments often fetch higher prices, especially when they arrive before local harvests. In Japan, premium varieties like Red Globe can sell for $12 per kilogram, nearly 6 times their value at origin. Freight costs, fuel prices, labor availability, and weather events all influence final returns. A single missed cold chain checkpoint or a delayed vessel can lead to entire shipments being downgraded or rejected. Behind each exported ton are contracts, currency fluctuations, and per-box calculations, where shelf life isn't just biological, it's financial. In the produce section of a grocery store, a bunch of grapes might seem ordinary, one fruit among dozens. But behind its presence is a chain of decisions, movements, and people stretching across hemispheres. It was cut before sunrise, chilled within hours, inspected by machines and hands, and kept within 2 degrees of temperature tolerance. From vine to shelf, it crossed oceans in sealed containers, passed through customs, and entered distribution networks, timed to the hour. And yet, it arrives firm, sweet, and market-ready, still coated in its natural bloom, still unbroken by the distance it traveled. Every year, over 6.2 million metric tons make this same crossing, not because of chance, but because of precision. Behind each grape, there is not just a harvest, but a system designed to move something fragile, dependably, across the world.